Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go, Josh.
All right, so I hate to start this off on a super down note, but I feel like in this movie and in movies that we've talked about in the past, but in this movie also, there is an instance of an attempted suicide. And so I did want to bring up, before we started talking about anything, I did want to bring up that, there is a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline available for people to call. So if you feel like that, then there's a resource available for you. So it's 1-800-273-8255 or 1-800-273-TALK. And there's people available to talk to you if you have any kind of feelings or compulsions towards that.
I don't think that's starting the podcast off with a down note. I think that is responsible, and you're being responsible, and you're being an adult about a subject that should be talked about more.
Yeah.
And that there should be people who present, just like you just did, the resources and letting people know that there are some answers to your questions. So I don't think that's a down note
and
at
I
all.
think the key is if you, if you're in that situation, then, you feel like there's nothing left or you feel like there's no other options, but there is an option. So keep that in mind, that there is an option and it's available for you 24 hours a day. It's 1-800-273-8255. Okay. So this movie isn't really a happy-go-lucky movie anyway. We're going to talk about Hillbilly Elegy, the new Ron Howard movie based on a memoir by J.D. Vance. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is shaped like an Oscar. I want to get your opinion on that, first of all. Okay.
What people can't see is I'm doing a bunch of strange hand motions into the camera because I need to keep my energy up about this movie. So I'm trying to physicalize it so I can talk about this movie because I'm perplexed. The elephant in the room, you're asking me about because I am an Oscar.
I would say you're an Oscar prognosticator. That is exactly what you are. You have this innate ability to hone in on a subject matter, a performance, a situation, and know how well that's going to work with the Oscars. And so I think you've got your finger on the pulse of what this movie is and what it maybe isn't. And so I wanted to get your opinion first on that.
And I will toot my own horn because I can do this months and months and years in advance of the Oscars ever coming out. I have some kind of foresight. I don't know what or why, but I have been given the ability to see through the looking glass and predict things that most people go, yeah, right, whatever. That's such a Paul James pick. And then it happens. So is the elephant in the room that this is Oscar bait?
Yes.
That this is Glenn Close's chance? That this is Amy Adams' chance? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ignore the elephant in the room, thus the expression, because I don't think it's relevant to the conversation per se about this movie. But if you're asking me, do I foresee? The answer is no.
Okay.
Without a shadow of a doubt, no. And if it does happen for Glenn Close, in my personal opinion, and I always like to start off with the positive. So let me just start with this. I love Ron Howard. I love Glenn Close. I love the kid in it, Gabriel Basso. Yeah, he was in Kings of Summer. I predicted he was going to do well in this.
Yeah, and he was the gangly kid in Super 8. Do you remember Super 8, the J.J. Abrams movie?
Yes, I do.
He's the tall,
absolutely. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Kid. Yeah. Crazy.
He's got something about him, but none of that. Is that positive enough to start with? Because I don't want to start off bashing something, but I'm struggling with this movie. I use the word perplexed because I am so perplexed about what this movie is. What does Ron Howard want from us? So if this is Glenn Close's chance to finally win an Oscar, I will be saddened by that because I do think she does some interesting work in this. She has the only emotional moment in the movie that rang true for me. And there's only one. There's one moment that I was touched. And I'm a sucker for that stuff. The melodramatic music swells, somebody's crying up, somebody's dying, somebody's getting hurt. I'm all about tearing up and being manipulated emotionally. I am all about it. But I was struggling with this movie, big time struggling, to the point where I was talking back to it, and that's unusual for me. So if people think it's Glenn Close's time, I have no problem with that, but not this performance. If this is the one that she wins the Oscar for, it will not be about her finally winning an Oscar. It will be everything that everybody bashes on the Oscars about. This movie's Oscar bait, this performance Oscar bait. She didn't win. Olivia Colman, by the way, predicted by me, won, and not her. Amy Adams, this is her 6th nomination. For doing what? What in this movie that did they do that finally solidifies their chance at winning an Oscar? It's not on the screen. It's not in the script. It's not in their performances. It's just not.
So yeah, that was one of my questions was, why did Ron Howard want to make this movie? Why did Amy Adams want to be in this movie? Why did Glenn Close want to be in this movie? And the only thing I could come up with, well, I can't come up with any answers for Ron Howard, but with Glenn Close, there's a scene in the car with young JD, and that's kind of like it. What it felt like to me was like a knockoff of the Fighter car scene with Melissa Leo and Christian Bale, except they are able to move past any kind of rote, here's the words that I'm saying, and they get past all of that by just singing this song together. And like that is I mean, it is a little bit weird, and it took me a while to like get used to that. But they do something, they transcend the medium and allow us to feel like we're looking in on a real relationship, whereas in this movie, it's not really the same kind of a scene. It's just buckle down and move forward, and I think that's exactly what that character needed to hear at that time. But it was a good piece of acting in my opinion. But it's Glenn Close, so like she's gonna do well with pretty much anything you give her. But I felt like it just wasn't there. I don't know if it was the script or I don't know enough about the book, but the one thing I did notice about the book is that the title of the book is Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. And culture wasn't even really talked about in this movie. So either that was a missed opportunity for the movie, or it was just thrown out so that they could fit whatever they wanted to do into 2 hours. I don't know, but it seemed like there was definitely something missing in this movie. And I don't even know if the subject matter is dynamic enough to warrant a 2-hour movie, but I don't know. There were so many missed opportunities for me. Okay, let me give an example. There were so many missed opportunities for me. One example is there's a scene where you see a flashback to Meemaw and Pawpaw as young kids leaving their Kentucky town and going to Ohio and driving up past a big factory. And then later on in the film, you see them driving past that same factory and the factory is shut down. And then also driving through downtown and the downtown is thriving. And then later on in the film, the downtown is just kind of a barren ghost town type of a downtown. And so there's not really any kind of engagement with that or any kind of real interaction with those facts. And I felt like if you're going to show that, you need to either dig into that or don't show it. I don't know. And then also my biggest problem with this movie is the editing. How did that hit you?
Okay, well, let me first answer a couple of your questions from my point of view. What did Amy Adams see in this script, in this character? It's all on the idea that she's a recovering, falling off the wagon drug user. She has been abused. She has been traumatized as a child, which is yet another one of those going through the town moments where it's not utilized or even a necessity to know that stuff. So playing a mother who's struggling, who was successful in her high school years, especially for her town, and then being semi-successful in her career and yet allowing her demons and addictions to take over. It reminds me of from Moonlight, the mother from Moonlight. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same thing where you have to overcome your demons and rise above it. So I can see where the meat is on the bones of this character. I just don't know. It has to come down to one thing, and it's either choices Ron Howard made or the script is not what they needed it to be. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff. I just know when there's a deficit, I can feel it. As for Glenn Close, she does disappear as much as she can in this performance. And it must be interesting as an actor to know that you're going to be able to wear probably the most comfortable costumes you've ever had in your life, because she doesn't wear anything, but she might be wearing a weight suit, commonly known as a fat suit, which I don't really like that term, something to make it look like she's heavier than she is. And, the wig and the makeup and the constant smoking, there's a lot of stuff there that as an actor, I could see an actress being attracted to that stuff and how hard it would be to play that stuff. I get it. For Ron Howard, I think it comes down to this is at the core of what he does. Person held down, person rises above, person becomes Cinderella Man, Apollo 13, Splash, Beautiful Mind. It's what he does. This is completely in his wheelhouse. And he is one of those directors who does not have a subject or a theme that's consistent with every movie. Every topic is different. It might be the same theme, but every topic is different, because there's nothing like a mermaid and nothing like Apollo 13 and nothing like Cinderella Man and nothing like Beautiful Mind. They don't have anything in common when it comes to story wise other than these themes. So I can see why Ron Howard would have been pulled to it. That said, I don't understand anybody's choices in this movie. None of them. All the way down to where you always point out to me soundtracks and noises and bings and whistles and direction and editing and sound editing and film camera techniques. You always point things out. And I always go, oh, I never even noticed that until you pointed that out, which is kind of a compliment for me because it didn't take me out of it. I don't know what he's doing in this movie. There are like so many different confusing styles that he uses that it stuck out to me in the first 5 minutes. That opening sequence, there's like handheld camera, then a point of view camera, and then
there's like a GoPro on the
drone,
bike on the bike wheels.
GoPro, right?
Yeah,
drone cameras, which I'm getting sick of. By the way, I am so tired of the overhead long winding road shot
because you can
by a drone.
Yeah. It's
drones. We get it. It's a cool shot. We got it. Stop it. And I'm tired. I sound so cynical. Too bad. I'm just a little worn down by the drone shot coming from the bottom, going all the way up to the furthest part that the drone can get the shot from, and then hovering so you can see a bunch of cars going down a long winding road, or in this instance, a bike going through the woods, whatever it is. So and then that whole sequence when he gets to the lake and he's floating and then he gets attacked. I don't understand the idea of what Ron Howard was trying to say with what the techniques he presented with his storytelling. And then there's that sequence later on when, actually it's all the time. Every time there's anything dramatic, it has this chaotic kind of handheld thing, and then it slows down and you see the shots of the cops who just showed up, who you know nothing about, nor need to know anything about. So why are we looking at that person's expression? I don't get it. Like, is that supposed to tell us they're judging Amy Adams later on in the film when the cops are called, I think the second or third time when she's freaking out? I think it's the sequence when she's cut her wrist.
Yeah, in the street.
Yeah. It's odd for me to even notice things like that. So it was distracting and I didn't get it. Usually you can say, hey, did you notice this? And I go, no. And you go, I think it's because of this. And I go, oh, that's interesting. So the next time I watch the film, I'm aware of that moment. And I go, I felt that. I could not articulate it like Josh did, but that's why you're the broadcast engineer and I'm the actor. And it brings something to me that goes, okay, that rang true, but I don't know why. And you go, well, it's because they did this. And I go, oh, that's really cool. That's why I felt this way. I was trying to figure out why there were so many different things just in one scene. So it was mega distracting for me.
That's too bad, because there's style choices should bring you into a narrative as opposed to take you out of the narrative, and they should bolster the argument that the director is trying to make in the film. But that was the hard part, is that there was like a question as to who am I supposed to identify with more? Who am I supposed to feel sorry for the most? Am I supposed to feel sorry for the JD character the most? Am I supposed to feel sorry for the mom the most? And I do think that, I mean, there is definitely a reason to show the abuse that happened, that Mima and Papa would come back when they were younger and be drunk and would beat on Glenn Close's character, Mima. And then that is something that, I mean, you can see that that's a pattern that then could be repeated when Amy Adams gets older. When the Amy Adams character gets older, she may be inadvertently seeking out someone that, like, she may be feeling like that is a relationship, that is how relationships go, or that is how relationships are, even though that's not necessarily the case, and that's not really how someone should show their love to someone else. But there are definitely repeated things, and that's, I think what the point of this movie is, that you can break a cycle of violence, break a cycle of abuse, break a cycle of these things. And there's multiple characters that kind of bring the JD character to this decision that he has close to the end of the film. And so I think that that's the only thing that I could get from it. One of the lines that is pushing us slowly towards this is from JD's sister, Lindsay, played by Haley Bennett, which I'm going to take a very small pause and say that I think that she's the best part of this movie, because she doesn't have much to do, but she does it really, really well. And I love her in anything. We've talked about her multiple times. We just recently talked about her in The Devil All the Time. And she was also in Magnificent Seven, which we also talked about. She's been in Girl on a Train. She's been in a bunch of stuff. But I think that for multiple reasons, she was a real bright point for me, because every time she was on screen, I believed her where she was. She was also someone who had to play a 16-year-old or 18-year-old, and then she had to play a 30-year-old or 35-year-old woman with 3 kids. And she was able to do both of those things. I think that the hair and wardrobe really helped, because the things that she was wearing when she was supposed to be younger made sense. They seemed like something that a younger person would wear, and then vice versa. When she was older, it made sense that would be something they could wear. But she looked believable in both of those scenarios, which is difficult a lot of times. Now, obviously, somebody like Amy Adams is beautiful, and she can, she's also beautiful like Haley Bennett, but she can also, you can add more prosthetics or goop or whatever to her face and make her hair ratty and then make her seem older and go from there. But that doesn't seem like as heavy of a lift as someone going from 16 to 35, somebody going from 35 to 55, whatever. But I do think that one of the main things that the Haley Bennett character, Lindsay, says to JD is that she says to him, don't make us your excuse, at a certain point where he's kind of like, well, I got to get back, but I don't want to go. And, I feel like if I go, then it would be like, whatever. She's essentially helping him to move forward with his life.
I like the fact that you brought up Haley Bennett as one of the people who stood out in the film, because I agree with you 100%. She's a standout. She just is. So that's good that you brought her up. And I think that line is a key to this movie, but as an audience member, we're presented the wrong locks. So we can't figure out what key.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Where it fits.
You're right. The only other key that I found, and I dug for them, the only other key that I found was in that there's a scene in the car where Mima is given JD they're having a come to Jesus meeting, and it's after he throws the calculator that she bought him out of the window, and then he goes and gets it, comes back in, and then this is that scene we talked about a little bit earlier, where seems like the most Oscar-y of Oscar scenes for Glenn Close. And she essentially says, you need to be somebody or not. And so she's saying that you have to kind of make a choice whether to, and I think they're trying to get this character to get him on board, multiple times, but it's in a non-helicopter parenty way. Whereas maybe nowadays the things that are the parenting examples that are shown on whatever daytime TV or whatever, is that like, I'm going to really sit down with you. I'm going to really engage with you. I'm going to be on your level and I'm going to really like give you positive feedback. But for her, that isn't the way that she works. And he wasn't even able to realize, I mean, it took other instances for him to realize how much she is sacrificing for him. And he just grew up at a particular moment. And so we got to see him grow up. But ultimately, they're trying to bring this character to the point that where he is at the end of the movie. I think I was trying to figure out how this would have worked as a linear story, as a chronological story, because would it have worked? Would we have been able to follow it and get things from it in the same way that they felt like intercutting flashbacks with present day was going to work? Because I feel like we already kind of know a lot about the character at the beginning of the film. And so when we see certain revelations, they maybe don't pay off as much, maybe. Obviously, he does well enough so that he can get into college, so that he can get into Ohio State. And then obviously he does well enough at Ohio State that he can get into Yale Law School. So all the time that we see him like screwing off and like doing poorly in school and all that, like we know there's an eventuality of him changing that. And so is there less of a revelation that he is getting better at school or paying more attention to school and utilizing his ability to do well in Algebra 2, which, by the way, I had that exact same Algebra 2 book, which was really creepy to me. So, yeah, I don't know. I keep trying to pinpoint what the issues are for me, and I can't even come up with that, which is a little scary.
Well, I have a few things that keep coming to mind. Let's say the theme of the movie is person rises above their circumstances, okay? And he does become successful to the point where he's going to Yale to become a lawyer. So that's pretty impressive, just the fact that you got into Yale. So obviously you have rose above it, and you already know that going into the first 10 minutes of the movie, because he talks about the money and the finances and all that, and he's still having trouble, even though he's in Yale Law School. He's got finances and all this other stuff. By the way, no whisper of a girlfriend at that moment. There are moments in this movie that should be explored deeper. And the moment when he becomes aware that, and is it Meemaw or Mawmaw? Because
I believe it's Meemaw,
is,
because I used to call my great grandma Mawmaw, so I would have like put those together. I believe it's Meemaw.
They call her Meemaw?
Yeah.
Why is it spelled like that?
Oh, I don't know. It says Mawmaw on IMDb, but I was pretty sure it was Meemaw.
Because Meemaw is what Sheldon calls his grandmother on The Big Bang Theory. Anyway, I digress. We'll go with Meemaw because you are the man. So when he does come to the self-realization that Meemaw is trying to help him, that he needs to take out the trash, he needs to do his dishes, he needs to do his homework, he needs to do all of that stuff, that small moment is given as much weight as anything else in the film. So I can't attach myself to understanding what Ron Howard wants from me from watching this film, because everything has the same gravity. Everything has the same weight. So if that's what this movie is about, then that should be huge. He should start working out, because he's obviously much more fit as a young adult than he was as a kid. Although he's not that much out of shape as a kid, but he's larger.
He also
than
went to
most
the military
kids that
too.
age. They call him.
So, I mean, he's,
right.
That's going to get you in shape no matter what.
Then why are there no scenes where he's working out in the military, or things that happen to him in the military, that you get the impression that that moment when the calculator gets thrown out of the car and Meemaw says, you better get it and it better not be broken, all that other stuff, you better straighten out your act, is the moment that gave him the energy to continue on to become the Yale law student. Yes, the military probably was something that helped with other things in his life and probably gave him some, I don't know, the GI Bill, some money for undergrad. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why people go into the military before they go into college time, and that's usually because of money, or they feel like they need to serve, and that's an admirable thing. The point is that scene that really he starts to change his life and starts to clean up and does all the things that she says, and has to pick up spaghetti from a garbage can that fell over and a dog's eating from it and he has to shoo the dog away. I mean, is that supposed to show us that his spirit has grown and now he's learned and he's going to do better than his circumstances? So that's the theme of the movie. If that's what's supposed to be happening, it just feels like everything's on the same level. So I can't extract that from it because that didn't stand out or shine any brighter than anything else. And that brings me to my main point. This is a backwards compliment for Ron Howard. I think that he filmed some incredible scenes and sequences. And whether or not I understand his directorial choices, because a lot of times I don't in this film, there's a moment in Cinderella Man where it turns into this art house film. There's a film inside the film, if you will. I think it's about the story of when he was a little boy that the main character, Russell Crowe, plays. I can't really remember the whole sequence, but I was very impressed by this mainstream director being able to do something that looks like it came right out of an independent film or an art house film and interjected it in the middle of his big boxing mainstream film, which didn't do as well critically and Oscar-wise as it should have. It was very Oscar-worthy all the way down the line. That said, I know Ron Howard can do these things. It's almost like he got so much great work from all of these people. When he went to go put it together, he just decided to put it all in there because it's all great. And that brings me to my main point. Every single scene seems like a really great opening scene to a movie. And when you have nothing but great opening scenes to a movie, there is no middle part of the movie and there is no ending to the movie. Because when the movie ended, did it really feel like it ended? Didn't it feel like it was just starting again? There are scene after scene after scene that I went, oh, that should have started the movie. But wait, no, that scene's great. That should have started the movie. Oh no, that scene's great. If it was about a man rising above his circumstances and that his Meemaw was a reflection of that and his mother was a reflection of that, his Paw was a reflection of that, and how they bounced off of him and he bounced off of them and rose above it anyway, because you learn that the mother does well at the end of the movie. So she rises above it too. If that's what it's about, then why did the movie not start with him getting into Yale and him reflecting about how unbelievably successful he's been in spite of or because of, or this is the reason why, because of the family I come from. The film sets you up to believe that it's going to be about family taking care of family, because when he gets beat up at that waterhole, the narration, which is just unnecessary in my opinion, and it's not utilized a whole lot. It's like comes in the beginning of the movie and then it's somewhere in the middle, and then does it happen again?
No,
it's gone. It's weird. It's unnecessary. And usually I'm all about exposition and telling me what I should know. Tell me exactly what I should know. And then if I feel it, I'm cool.
But narration is a crutch though. Now, I mean, I think that narration is a crutch. We just talked about Clockwork Orange, and I think that is narration utilized well. But if there was a way for Kubrick to tell that story without narration, I'm sure he would have done it. But that's just, I mean, the source material just didn't dictate that.
I just don't buy into the whole narration as a crutch thing 100%.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of adaptation, and they talk about that in adaptation, and Brian Cox talks about, and if you end up narrating your film, you're dead, whatever he says. God forbid, whatever he says in that movie. It's a great sequence. But there's narration all the way through that movie, but in a kind of different way. Narration is normal to me because Once Upon a Time is how all the stories I grew up and how all the stories anybody grew up listening to happens. And it's just there's
narration,
a prologue.
And that's like a chorus though, like in Shakespeare, right? Don't you have a chorus in Shakespeare? The beginning of Romeo and Juliet, Greek chorus, So that's not that's not what I would consider.
That's narration.
That's not what I consider.
Sure it is. They're coming out to tell you why Cassandra's a woe-is me person.
Okay, well,
absolutely.
Maybe I'm thinking of character voiceover. Maybe there's a differentiation there that I'm not really putting together, but I think there's a difference between.
I just don't have a problem with it because you always had a minstrel coming out, and many moons ago in a far off place, they set up the scene, and that's narration. And maybe if you're talking about a character telling you what you should think and feel, maybe that's a problem, and maybe that's a crutch. I'm not sure. But the point to that is that in that narration in the beginning of the movie, he says, but you always have family who's going to look out for you. And then the big kind of like guys come out of the hillbilly guys come out of wherever and start to like save him from these three guys beating him up and yada, yada. So I thought we were getting ready to get set up for a young man who was eventually going to be successful, but without the help of his family, he would have never been where he's at. Even though she had this problem, even though Meemaw didn't live with Paw, even though all these things happen, they still set him up for success. And that never happens in the movie. So I don't have a problem with narration if it's leading you down the path of understanding what you're supposed to take from a movie. And I'm not talking about spoon feeding people. I'm not talking about telling a person exactly how to think and feel about a movie. I'm saying that, hey, you might be looking at this character right now, but really, if you look at her, you're going to find out what you need to know about this movie. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that narration. I'm fine with somebody telling me the themes and the ideas of a movie during a character voiceover. I don't have a problem with that. Robert De Niro does that all the way through Casino.
Yeah.
All the way through. They do it all the way through Goodfellas. But then she takes over. Lorraine Bracco's character takes over that one place, which is brilliant.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Because Scorsese does something different.
Yeah.
You know, it's no longer, it's important that she speaks at this moment. And he utilizes and turns the table on narration or character voiceovers. So my issue is not that. My issue is it's a false premise that you were set up with. At least once you get through the next hour and 57 minutes, nothing has anything to do with that. He became who he was in spite of what his mother was, what his grandmother was, what happened to him as a child.
Well,
so I needed to see why we're seeing Paul die, which is Glenn Close's best scene in the movie, by the way, which I was talking about earlier. I need to know why that scene. Okay, let's go on the premise. This movie's about a man overcoming his circumstances and being greater than the sum total of his parts and becoming something out of nothing. Let's say that's the theme of the movie. Okay. Then I need to know why we're seeing Paul die. Did that have an effect on this young kid? I need to know why we need to see his mother thrown out of a house of a bum or move in with another guy who you know nothing about, and then you know nothing about his son, and then he's a pot smoker and the father's a pot smoker. And then what does that have to do with what we're watching?
That was a waste of screen time, but yeah, I'm
at a loss for it because I believe in Ron Howard. I believe what he has done in films has been spectacular, has been great. He is a great storyteller. I just don't know what he wants from us. And on top of all of that, I don't know why you would want to tell this same story again. We've seen this story a million times. So if you're going to tell somebody a story again and again and again, you have to come up with a reason why your take on it makes it interesting for us to watch again. Because we have seen the abusive parent. We have seen the drug-laden parent. We have seen the nurturing grandmother. We have seen the child who was chunky, military, successful. We have seen the supportive, thankless girlfriend played by Freida Pinto, by the way. Yeah. Thankless. She brought something new to the role, though. She seemed genuinely, affectionately interested in this guy's life.
Well, and I think
I was more interested why she doesn't know anything about his life than anything we have learned up to that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think that she's the tether to his new life. So he has been in his new life for a certain period of time, and now he's confronted with his old life because, like you said, there's different ways to look at this. And I think at the beginning of the movie, the older JD believes that he has gotten to where he's at and at Yale Law School in spite of his family. But then as the movie goes on, I think the theme of the movie that Ron Howard's trying to portray is that it's not that he got to Yale Law School and to where he was at in his life in spite of his family, it's because of his family. So he hasn't gone back to deal with how his relationship with his family has affected him. And and I think that you're right. There's too many scenes in the movie, and we're shoving in all the scenes. The scene where Amy Adams' character Bev, where she tries to go back to her boyfriend, and her boyfriend throws out all of her clothes, and then JD gets in a rage, and he goes upstairs, and he's like, "I'm just like my whatever," you know. It's very rubber stamped. It's just we've seen it before. You're right. We've seen it before. Move on. And I think we have a pretty high bar for movies. I'd be interested to see what somebody just like thumbing through Netflix and being like, "Oh, look, I know that person from whatever, you know, I know that person from The Fighter or whatever." I don't even know what Amy Adams is in. They would have seen, maybe, I don't know, but still, I think that
Enchanted.
There you go, from Enchanted. I kept thinking of like The Master, no. The Fighter, no. I'm just trying to think.
Can you imagine
heck?
that would be the movie that made you love Amy Adams?
Oh, you know what? Talladega Nights. She was in that, right? Wasn't she?
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely. Batman v Superman, Justice League.
There we go. Sure.
She's Lois Lane.
Okay, she's Lois Lane. So anyway, that sort of a thing that somebody would just be like, "Hey, I've got 2 hours. Let me just watch this." So I don't really know, and maybe they would get something different out of it than you or I would. But yeah, I think that we're starting to hone in on a few
I don't
things.
know. I don't think that that's fair to say we have a higher bar because we love movies differently than
I never said
some
that.
people do. I'm not. You just said that we have a higher standard or something, right?
Okay.
You said there's a higher bar.
Well, I guess I expect. Yeah,
you
we
said
expect
that there's a
more
higher
out of
bar
a
for
movie.
him. And
We expect more out of a movie than.
see, I disagree. I disagree
Okay.
with that. I see why you're saying that.
So I'm being
and
pretentious right now.
No, not at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not pointing my finger literally at you because of that. I would never do that. I don't think because you have an opinion about something that might differ with somebody makes you pretentious. I don't think that makes you pretentious at all. I think that makes you interested in something differently than some people. So you invest in it differently. You do the work. You study the subject. You have a idea of how things work for you. That doesn't make you pretentious. It makes you educated and opinionated in the best way. You're analytical when it comes to movies. I don't necessarily think because we might not like this movie that it makes us pretentious. I think that my bar is set at a steady level. Okay. And I'm not expecting you to come above it or below it or anything like that. I'm not expecting you to do something other than tell your story. My doubts about this movie has nothing to do with whether or not I am better educated as a film goer than the next person. It has to do with Once Upon a Time. And then what happens after that is that engaging as a storytelling process. And this film, for me, brings up more questions and makes me ponder things that have nothing to do with the movie based on what I'm seeing in the movie. I understand what you're saying. You're saying that just like your popcorn going crowd who turns on this movie might be looking at it differently than we are.
Mhm.
I disagree with that. I think that they're going to feel that there's a lack of storytelling. However you want to define that, people can sense that and people can feel that. And I also think that if we do have a higher bar that we set or expectations that we set, then why can we not expect a director who we like and I love to meet that expectation? I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I don't think that's this at all. I don't think that my expectations of this film, which I never go into films with expectations, I'm pretty clear about that kind of stuff. Now I get excited and I'm looking forward to it. I was looking forward to the conversation about Glenn Close and winning her Oscar finally. I was looking forward to this being a Ron Howard film, which if you put this movie in with 10 other movies and said which movie was the Ron Howard film, this would have been the 10th one on the list for me. I would have not believed it was a Ron Howard film. Something about it doesn't, although he does have this ability to be, and I mean this as a compliment, kind of scatterbrained about his narrative. Parenthood is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It's kind of scatterbrained all over the place, but for whatever reason, that film works for me. There's something about it that works. And I think it comes down to a couple of reasons, but that's another podcast. Steve Martin's great. No, I was thinking of his father, Jason Robard, and Tom Hulce in that film. Their relationship and his relationship with his newfound grandson is masterful, and it sums the movie up for me. Speaking of which, it is exactly what this movie isn't for me. You are a sum total of who you are because of who you were raised by. And you learn a lot about who Jason Robards is by finding out who Tom Hulce is. You find out that Jason Robards now needs to be a better grandfather than he was ever a father, because he wouldn't be in the circumstances he was in if he had been a better father. That's not a judgment. That's just saying that's what I saw when I saw this movie. Right there, just the idea of that scene between Jason Robards and the little new grandson lit me up way more than anything in this movie, this new Ron Howard movie. And I don't know why, but I don't think it's because we have a higher standard. I think it's because we have, I wouldn't say higher, but we have a need to have storytelling, not in a certain way. I can't think of what I'm trying to say here. We just, if the story is not gelling, we just have a better way of noticing it than most people. Because we've studied the subject, or we're interested in the subject, or that's our passion. I don't think that because we don't think this film works, or I don't think this film works, I don't want to speak for you, that means that my standard's higher than anybody who might watch this on Netflix. There's some people have the worst taste in movies ever, but those are their favorite films. So for me, that's valid. You know, a friend of mine likes that Brooke Shields movie, Sierra or whatever it's called, about the Sierra Desert and the races back in the 1920s, the car races. Yeah, it's an obscure like 1980s movie. It's not very good, but she thinks it's the best thing ever. It's her favorite movie ever. And so for her, that's her favorite movie. But if we were going to talk about that movie, it wouldn't be about my standard's much higher than hers, so this movie sucks. No, this movie doesn't work because of this, and this. And I think this is the same thing with Hillbilly Elegy. I think that we're just, for me, I don't understand what this movie wants from me.
Well, and I think that I think we have honed in a little bit, a good amount, on specific pain points for each of us while watching this film. And so, I mean, I think it was a productive discussion, but ultimately, like, we're awesome and Ron Howard is lost in the woods. So, you know, no, Ron Howard's an amazing filmmaker.
Not mine. So. Those are Josh's words, not mine.
No, we have to kind of counter this with the fact that we've never made a movie before. I've never made a movie. You've never made a movie. So, you know, Ron Howard is taking the swing, like he is doing this. And so it's not going to be everything for everybody all the time, but I'm interested to see what he's going to do next.
Okay. I just think if we were the type of people, or if I was the type of person who was like, I hate Amy Adams, I hate Glenn Close, I hate Ron Howard, I'm going to watch this movie anyway. That would be setting us up for something. That would be a standard or a bar that I don't think Ron Howard or anybody in the film could reach, because they don't like those people to begin with. That's not what we're saying here. We love all of these people. This film, I would like to hear him break down what he wanted in this film. And sometimes that does help me understand a film better. So it's hard pressed. I want to say maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't think that's the way that it is. And I never say this. Other people have not taken to this movie. This movie has one of the lowest Metascorers I've ever seen. Not that that means anything, and not that critics mean anything, because they don't really, if you like a movie, other than trying to prove them wrong by saying how much you like a movie. But there's almost too much in this film to absorb it and to try to figure out where you come at the end of it. Like when you see those statistics and you see the pictures at the end of the film of the real people, it was neat to see how much they really did look like the actors that were chosen to play them. That was kind of cool. And like, you're happy that the mother is sober for 6 years, and you're happy that I can't remember Frida Pinto's character's name, that they're married and they have 2 kids. Usha, right. I'm happy for them. But usually at the end of those type of movies, when you see those statistics, or not statistics, but those facts about where the people really are nowadays, you're kind of ingratiated with their character at that point. So you're even more happy that they're successful. And that's just, I was happy that they were successful. I actually thought maybe this should have been a documentary And Ron Howard did that Jay-Z documentary, which I thought was brilliant. So it's not like Ron Howard.
He also did a Beatles documentary recently.
Yeah, I know. I want to see
so
it.
good.
I want to
It's
see
on
it.
Hulu.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. So I believe in the power of Ron Howard. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what he does next. So final answer, harkening back to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Final answer, Amy Adams and Glenn Close will not win Academy Awards this year for this movie.
Or be nominated.
Or be nominated. That's big. That's big. Even in a 2020, even in like a year that things don't come out.
Is it bad for me to say, as I whisper, shouldn't be nominated versus will be?
I can't determine like what's going to happen. I can say like who I would want to be nominated, but I don't ever feel like I have any ability to determine this person will win, this person will get nominated, all that stuff.
Not to backtrack and take it back, but because now I'm doubting myself. The 2020 aspect might be a factor.
Okay.
But there have been people nominated for not so good movies. One might say Marissa Tomei and My Cousin Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
She even won. A lot of people don't structurally think that's the greatest movie ever, but it's still a solid movie.
It is.
It might not be what you think is a solid movie, not you, just anybody, but it is a solid movie. It has its beginning, middle, and end, and it's all wrapped up, and she's priceless, and he's great, and they're great. Ralph Macchio is really good in it. It's a solid movie. So you can say you don't like it, and you can say it's a superficial comedy, but it's a solid movie. I'm trying to think of A Blind Side, Sandra Bullock. People didn't like that movie. It's still a solid movie structurally. It is one of those movies that somebody might come across and go, oh, I love Sandra Bullock on Netflix and think it's the best movie ever. Although critics and most people thought it was lacking something, but still it's a solid movie. This movie, it's not solid for me. Okay. It's not. Sorry.
Okay.
I feel bad.
That's okay. All right. Well, that's how we're going to end it. All right. So you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can tweet us at actorengineer. And you can also find us on YouTube. Just search for Actor and Engineer Podcast, and we'll see you next time.